A very good morning to one and all. Warm greetings from RBVRR Women's College of Pharmacy. On behalf of RBVRR Women's College of Pharmacy, we welcome you to the webinar on Artificial Intelligence in Drug Discovery and Healthcare System, organized by RBVRR Women's College of Pharmacy. Today, I would like to introduce Dr. Tripura Krishna, Head of the Department of Pharmaceutics, to chair today's session. I welcome you, ma'am. Over to Tripura, ma'am.
Very good morning to all of you, to all the participants. Today's speaker, Dr. Nitish. I would like to give a brief introduction about Dr. Nitish. Dr. Nitish is the CEO and co-founder of Health Cloud AI. He got his BTech from IIT Madras in 2007 and electrical engineering from University of Maryland, USA in 2012. His award-winning PhD dissertation focused on developing machine learning techniques for computer vision. Dr. Nitish then worked at Qualcomm for 2 years on computational imaging and shipped novel features on millions of phones, including LG, Huawei, etc. In 2014, he started as an early employee at Light, a computational imaging camera startup in Silicon Valley, where he got the first-hand experience of scaling a Silicon Valley company from 8 to 140 employees. After shipping the Light L16 camera in 2017, he joined Jukes, an autonomous car startup in Silicon Valley. Here, he trained and developed deep learning models for driving with safety as the first priority. Dr. Nitish holds more than 30 US patents at the different stages of filing and also has published more than 10 peer-reviewed articles in several international conferences as well as journals. He has done internships at MERL, Cisco, and TI. And currently, he has this Eritra, an intelligent medical assistant to reduce clinical overload. In India, generally, the physicians are overburdened with the clinical and administrative workload of patients with only a few minutes to spend with each patient typically. Arintra is an AI-enabled platform for capturing a thorough clinical history, visualization, and insights. Arintra helps maximize doctors' consultation time by presenting a concise summary of patient's history collected beforehand. So, Dr. Nitish Shroff is currently working on this platform. We welcome you, sir, and we request you to start with your presentation.
Hi, can you see my screen? Hello, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. We can.
Okay, cool. So I'll get started. So hi, my name is Nitish Shroff, and I'm going to be talking about artificial intelligence in healthcare. What we have been building is Arintra, an intelligent medical assistant to reduce clinical overload, right? So I wish this talk was in person. It would have been a lot more fun, but in the pandemic, we will do with the webinar. So this has been my journey so far. As Dr. Tripura mentioned, I did my PhD in computer vision from University of Maryland, and prior to that, I did my bachelor's from IIT Madras. And after that, I was working at Silicon Valley startups. I'm really passionate about using machine learning to really improve people's life, right? Be it healthcare, be it consumers, or be it actually driving, right? After that, I was working at Light, where we were building this camera. It actually, one camera has 16 small cameras. It was a very cutting edge camera that is now being used for self-driving cars. And this was a great experience for me. And then again, a lot of machine learning is to be used here. And then I was working at Zoox, a self-driving car company, where basically we were driving on the San Francisco roads without a driver, right? So the car itself was able to navigate, identify all the obstacles in the world, understand all the cars near it, who are the pedestrians near it, and was actually able to drive very comfortably in the San Francisco roads. Of course, this technology is not ready for India yet, but for US roads, it's doing actually very good. Since then, since last March, I have been working on Arintra, an intelligent medical assistant, which really helps in reducing the load in clinical setup. Today, the talk will be basically it will be a short introduction to AI, very short, and then we'll focus on a small segment of AI called natural language processing. In healthcare, anytime we have text data, because we have a lot of text data, this becomes a lot more relevant. And then we will talk about how to even build a system. I'm sure some of you have been hearing about machine learning, and some of you might even be tinkering with it, right? Kind of playing along how to actually build a system. So I'll give you some insights into how to build such a system and what would it take to build a system. So let's start with what's artificial intelligence. You guys would have heard a lot about artificial intelligence. It's basically a set of theory, algorithms, and computing frameworks to facilitate various tasks that require human intelligence. For instance, like when we see an image, we know that this is a car or this is a bird. Specifically, this is a sparrow or a crow, right? For this, we have learned as humans. We have learned this over huge. Like when we were kids, we were really learning this without like consciously knowing this. We were learning all this. So it's basically a set of framework in which we train machines to identify such things, right? It's the visual perception or speech recognition. All of you would have heard about Alexa, or maybe even played with Alexa or Google Home, right? They're kind of doing the speech detection. What you say, they hear actually, and then translate it to actions, right? So it's basically like other human hearing. That's the idea, right? And that's the intelligence we are building in the Alexa or the Google Home. And then decision making, the things that you guys do a lot, right? The doctors do a lot, right? At a very short period of time, process all the information and actually make a clinical decision that could impact patients' treatment, right? And it's basically, one thing I would like to emphasize is it's one term that encompasses two aspects of it. One is rule-based, means experts like you, let's say, will create rules for the healthcare, right? When aspirin is given, this should not be given, right? When when you have pneumonia, you should treat it with this medication, right? So these are rules. As experts in the field, we know this much better. So we basically hand create these rules, and so that's one part of artificial intelligence. The second part, which has got a bigger boom in the past decade, has been machine learning, means where we have a lot of data, means like let's say we have a lot of data from all the journal papers, all your textbooks, and millions of patients. How can we use that data to learn something interesting? Can we use that data to learn what is the prognosis of a patient given this symptom, right? So that's what has really taken off, and that's typically called as the machine learning. And these are three of the words that will be thrown at you whenever you hear, especially in media or any of the blogs that you hear. Artificial intelligence is the bigger section, right? It's basically, as I said, contains the rules and the machine learning component. This is the bigger set, artificial intelligence. Machine learning is the smaller set, which has really taken off in the past decade. And the reason is been this even smaller set of it called deep learning. This is basically, the deep learning was kind of initially architected based on how the human neurons work, hence the name neural network. And in the current birth of it, it's now called deep learning. I'll talk about it why. But basically, it's a very deep layer of neural networks that, like, supposedly the way our brain works, it's supposed to mimic that. But that was only the starting point. It actually developed in a different way, focused a lot more on computation. Like the way, let's say, aeroplanes were first inspired by birds, but then aeroplane became its own thing, right? It no more behaves like a bird. The only commonality is the actual flying. Similarly, like the whole deep learning got inspired by human brain, but then it really focused on the computational aspects. It does not matter how the brain works. All we need to do is make sure it does its tasks, right? Some of the successful applications you hear a lot, as I said, speech to text, Alexa, Siri, Google Home. I'm sure you would have tried it out. Face recognition, if any one of you have any of those, face-based, like when it looks and phone unlocks, it's actually recognizing your face, right? So when I was doing my PhD, we could not have imagined that, right? But now it's actually in your phone, and that's the progress we have made in the past decade. And then you would have heard like computers defeating humans in complex games. Chess was kind of accomplished in the mid 90s. Last year, there was a big step that happened. AlphaGo, which I don't think is very popular in India, but very popular in China, is a very complex game, extremely, extremely complex, a lot more complex than chess. Their computers defeated humans. So there, that was a big boost. Although it's a game, but the idea is now to demonstrate that computers can do such complex tasks, and that's what it was demonstrating, really, right? And that was a huge step. And then comes the self-driving cars. Like you would have been hearing a lot. Google is trying their self-driving cars. I was working for a company called Zoox. Basically, all of them are trying to build cars that can drive on its own. Because driving is such a mundane task, right? It's a task that machine should be able to do, and that's what inspires this kind of applications. Why did we see such a huge boom in the past decade in AI? Why is all of a sudden you are hearing AI everywhere? Why? Right? There are three main reasons. Number one is lots and lots of data got created, basically is getting created. So we have sensors everywhere. All of us are entering a lot of our data on internet, be it Facebook, be it Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, right? And even this session for that matter, right? So there is a camera that's capturing my face. You guys are all looking at it, and basically that's a sensor right in my laptop in front of me capturing the data. And that's how huge amount of data got captured, is getting captured now, because the sensors got really cheap. What X-ray used to cost, let's say our MRI used to cost earlier, will be lot cheaper now, right? Or a blood test. So lots of data is getting created now. The second reason is development of powerful computing resources like GPUs. Like basically the powerful example they give is the rocket that was sent on moon actually had less computing power than your iPhone, right? That's the example they give, and that just shows how much our computing resources has developed, especially in the past decade. What is called as the GPUs, the graphic processing units, that took a big leap, basically saying that it helps, it basically parallelizes a lot of computing resource. Basically, you can do a lot of processing at the same amount, at the same time. And then comes the most important part, the sophisticated algorithms. So this is where researchers since 80s have been working, and suddenly they were able to make like a big leap in the end of like around 2009 or so, and that caused the whole boom. And one of the major things was, let's say this is a X-ray image or an MRI image, it doesn't matter. When I was doing my PhD back in 2007, we really had to mark this tumor by hand. An expert had to mark this, and then we will develop features for this and then run our algorithm on this. But now an expert just tells us that this image has tumor, and now we have access to millions of such images. And if we know, if we have a million of images, let's say 3 lakh of them, 3 lakhs of them have tumor and 7 lakhs do not have tumor. Now we can automatically learn what's a tumor. We don't have to mark what's a tumor in this image. We just feed it in, and then train our neural networks, which is a huge cascade of a lot of small neural networks to actually create one sophisticated neural network, and that's basically called as a deep learning setup, right? And outcomes, and like basically the output is the image again marked as a tumor. Right? So basically, this is what happened, this big change where now experts don't have to mark a tumor, but we can just directly feed the raw data, as we call it, the raw data, like the data that came out of the sensor directly without any annotation by the humans. AI in healthcare, you would have been hearing a lot. These are some of the things that are getting like quite a bit of traction. Drug discovery, I think this is part of this webinar. I'm sure you would have had good talks around that. Medical imaging and diagnostics has like lot of traction there. What we are really interested in is clinical decision support in the clinical setup. How do we take patient data and help make clinical decisions. And the one that we are currently working on is the virtual assistants. I'll talk about it. And what we mean is, how do we make intelligent assistants for the doctors, for the from the clinical pharmacist, let's say, right? Anyone practicing in the healthcare. But the most important part I really want to highlight here is all this, the entire AI, the entire boom, all the things that we are developing is really meant to assist healthcare workforce. It is not meant to replace anyone in the entire ecosystem. It's meant to assist them, reduce the burden of menial tasks, reduce the burden of doing very repetitive tasks that really does not need a professional like you. All it needs is a machine trick. So the goal is to really assist, provide the information, capture the information, give the information at the right time, and that's what AI applications really are good at. The goal is absolutely not to replace any healthcare professional as of now. Right, things might change in the next decade or so, but currently that's what it is. So any media buzz that you hear about, can AI replace doctors? These are all just bogus things. Do not be here. It's all about assisting the healthcare workforce. And the reason I'm emphasizing this is, in the past I've got this question quite often. Like, should I be scared? Will it replace anyone? This is why I want to emphasize this. Absolutely not that. You guys should get into it and actually build something very meaningful. And this is a very exciting field. So let's get into building something useful, right? Like, now let's take a clinical setup. In the countries where EMRs are used a lot, the hospital software, the electronic medical records, this is how a clinical note looks like. A 38-year-old female presented with leg inflammation, yellow skin, and frequent urination. And this is her visit in October 2016. And then she visited again in June 2017. She went to see a local doctor with a complaint of itching over the whole body, blah, blah. So, right, typically you would visit your doctor 10 times, 15 times. The thing is, this ends up being a huge amount of data over time, and then doctors really have to go through top to bottom, and they end up missing quite a few data here, right? So what can you do, right? Can we take this data and present it in a very visual format to the doctors? Can we present it in such a format that it's a very timeline of the patient? These are the major events in the patient's timeline that has been evolving with the right time. And let's say the doctor wants to know more about this. They click here, they will be able to navigate. They can navigate here, right? They can get a lot more context here. So can we build this? And why is this hard? Seems like an easy thing. I ask you, you can do it in 5 minutes. But again, as I mentioned, what seems easy for humans is actually pretty hard for machines, right? So to do this, what we really need to understand is identify all the clinical entities mentioned in this, right? We really have to understand that this is a 38-year-old, gender female. These are the symptoms she came with: leg inflammation, yellow skin, and frequent urination. Her medical history says normal cough, severe after 15 days, cough became severe. She had CT scan of thorax chest. Each and every entity we need to extract. And then we also need to associate it with the right timeline. And that's what makes it very challenging, right? And both you and I know how many abbreviations are there. There are so many medical jargons that are used in these things, right? Is SSKM a hospital, or is it like some procedure? What is it? We don't know. We really have to learn this, right? So that's what makes it very challenging. And once you have done this, you can actually make it what we in engineering call it as queryable also. You can actually build, let's say, the Google on the top of this data. You can type intelligent questions and it will give you intelligent answers, right? And can we build this? And what will it take to build this? So that's what we'll walk through. To do this, we need to do what is called as the natural language processing, the NLP, right? What is so natural about it, right? The word is natural language. What it means is the language you and I use in our in our day-to-day things. It's a language that you and I understand. It's not a language meant for machines. For instance, anything written in binary, like the 1-0 code, is meant for machines. It's not meant for humans to be read, right? But the language that I'm speaking right now, that's meant for humans to be understand. So that's what we mean by natural language, kind of processing the natural language, right? Understanding it. Like this is the patient has a family history of TB, right? That's what we need to understand from a given text. Every year, around 1.2 billion unstructured clinical document is created. 1.2 billion. And countries like India, these are not even really captured very well, right? I imagine once everything gets digital, amount of data that will be captured every year, right? A lot of critical information, a lot of learning is embedded in these documents at the patient level, that's patient, and also at the population level for the entire population, like for the entire Apollo hospital, what are the kind of patients coming in, what are the big things happening there, for entire any for the entire country, right? How many corona cases do we have, or any of those, right? So a lot of critical information is embedded there. Only if we had the way to actually access that and then process it. Imagine what kind of algorithms we can create, like, or medical protocols we could create if we had access to such data. That's just amazing, right? And NLP, when we apply to the clinical domain, that's basically what we call as clinical NLP, and this is what we are very passionate about. And also, big boys like Amazon and Google are also doing this, right? In healthcare, NLP becomes very important. As I mentioned, you really have to recognize all the medical entities, the symptoms, the conditions, the drugs, any interaction that happened, right? You really have to extract everything. And then question answering, as I mentioned, like, can you respond to the questions, right? And then can you combine the X-ray image or the MRI image with the patient's text data? Can you combine them and actually do even more inference? So this is where a lot of NLP is being used in healthcare. Let's start with a very simple example, right? What is called as the named entity recognition, right? You see an example, a sentence that you probably don't even have to think twice about. Patient is taking ibuprofen to manage recurring headaches, right? For you, a very simple statement, right? But for machines, what they have to now understand is that ibuprofen is a drug, like basically a treatment, more specifically a drug, but it's kind of a treatment that is being given to the patient. And recurring headache is the problem, right? Just to do this, we really have to train very sophisticated algorithms, right? Something that's very, very trivial for humans. And this is what we mean, like ibuprofen as a treatment, recognizing that, and recurring headache as a problem, recognizing that. Okay, so we call this as named entity recognition. Entity could be symptoms, conditions, drugs, anything. Okay. So why is named entity recognition important? It's a fundamental block of an NLP system. It helps in understanding anything that the doctor would have written, a nurse would have written, a clinical pharmacist would have written, right? Understanding all those notes, we really need to do a good job of this, right? And once you have identified everything being talked about, then you can actually build more interesting application layers on the top of it. Means you can actually say, okay, give me all the interactions that aspirin has had in the past 1 year, right? Or any of those. I'm making it up. I'm not a medical professional. I'm making it up. But the idea is you can build such intelligent applications once you have done the basics right. And that's why I'm talking about the basic entity, the named entity. And why is it hard? Like, what makes it so hard? It seems like a straightforward thing, right? But not really, right? Several, like, same entity can be mentioned by the doctors in several different ways. Left ventricular hypertrophy. Left ventricle is hypertrophic. Hypertrophy of left ventricle. Most likely, all the three things sounded exactly the same to you, but as you see, they are actually spelled differently, written differently. But all of us know that they are exactly the same thing. But to tell the machines that they are the same thing, we really need to train it in a very sophisticated way, right? And then nested structures that include other entities inside them, right? Pleuropericardial chest pain. Are we talking about the pain or the chest pain or the pleuropericardial chest pain, right? Are we talking about the chest? What are we really talking about, right? It turns out that we are talking about this as an entity, correct? So we really have to address all these challenges for our recognition of the entities. How do we build such a system? First, and this is where we'll just show a little bit of maths to you. The idea is to show there is a huge amount of sophisticated maths underneath it. But the good thing is all of us don't need to know that. We can actually work without knowing all this, right? And I think that's the point I really want to drive. First, we really have to represent each and every data statistically. Then we choose a mathematical model of what could be our prediction model. How can I predict if this patient will develop cancer or not? Like, what is the model? So there are hundreds and thousands of kinds of models out there that we have to pick from. And then what we call as train a model. We try to learn the parameters of the neural network. And that is what is called as the training a model. For this, we need a very good data set. I'll talk about it. And then basically as engineers, we spend most of our time going back to step 2 and keep iterating to 3 and 4. We realize and we measure the accuracy on the real data sets, like on real world. And once we are happy, then we actually go and deploy in the real world. We'll go to the hospital and say, hey, Dr. Lokesh, this sounds like a great algorithm, like a great system. Can you start using it, right? This is the step 7, and then we'll start the process again and build something else, right? I wanted to show here, there's a lot of maths involved here. Even to represent a word like sulfate, SULFATE, we actually represent the word first, and then also each of these each individual alphabets in a very sophisticated way. And that's what I wanted to show. And once you have represented them, then you can actually do a lot of other things on the top of it, right? As I mentioned, datasets, it's one of the most critical component of any good system. And in healthcare, this becomes very challenging. And the reason is obvious. You should not be I should not have access to your healthcare data because it could have very sensitive information that you do not want me to know, right? And this can have actually a lot of monetary implications also for countries where insurance is predominant. Your insurance premium can go up. You might not be able to get a job if your healthcare data gets leaked. Right, and that's why protecting healthcare data. This is just one of the reasons. Protecting healthcare data is extremely important, and this is where a lot of regulations are there. And that's why for us to get access to the data in the hospitals becomes very challenging. We typically don't have access to that, and for good reasons, right? But luckily, there are few publicly available data sets like I2B2 and Mimic. And that's what we use to actually develop anything interesting, right? And this is what I meant by training a model. So let's say this, you feed a lot of examples with the annotations. Let's say this is an example: Kabul is controlled by President Rabbani's government, which Taliban is fighting to overthrow. Right here, some expert will mark it that Kabul is a location. Rabbani is a person, Taliban is a place, right? And then we will have millions of those examples. We will feed it to our AI engine. And the idea is that AI engine will be able to learn the parameter. What is the, should it be 0.2 or 0.25 or 0.2789? What should it be, right? We have good algorithms to do that now, actually, and it's able to train itself. And when the training is done, we measure what is the accuracy. We basically run it on a little bit different set. Liverpool suffered an upset first home league defeat. So if we are able to recognize it with very high accuracy, we will be happy. But if not, we will go back and train it better with a different model or anything else, right? And this is where most of our engineering time is really spent, maybe years or so, right? And this is where a lot of progress has been made in the past decade. It's very computationally intensive. Like you'd have been hearing something called the cloud, right? Why is cloud so important? Because now I don't need to own my big computers and train them. I can actually use Google Cloud's server, like Google Cloud's computers, and I don't have to touch this computer. It's basically from here. I can just run a command, and actually it can train the entire system, the entire thing on Google's servers, right? So that's what is basically called the cloud, right? And that has huge amounts of computation, right? So a lot of progress has happened also because of such access that initially I could not have spent 1 crore rupees on buying those servers, right? But now Google Cloud lets me rent that amount of computation and train my model. So it's very, very computation intensive, and having access to cloud really helps. And as I mentioned, it's very, very dependent on the data set. Both the quality, if I have only one MRI image or two MRI image, I will not be able to develop a tumor detection algorithm, right? But if I have access to 1 million images, that's when we are talking. That's when we are really saying that, okay, fine, we will be able to actually develop that. So it's important to have both quantity and quality of the data set, right? And once we have trained the model, we can actually go and test. And then if it looks good, we are happy. Tumor is getting detected as tumor. Things that are not tumor are not getting detected as tumor. So we are happy. We'll go and deploy and sell it to Philips or whoever, right? And I wanted to show an example here, an easy example. Let's say we build a named entity recognition. This is how the output will look. So let's say this is the date, TSH 1.5, levothyroxine was decreased to 25 mcg daily. Right? Again, date, TSH 10, levothyroxine increased to 50 mcg daily. Right? She developed chest pain and palpitation. She presented to the ED where she was diagnosed with GERD. Right? So here we know TSH is a test. Right? And this was done on September 2014. Right? Similarly, levothyroxine is a generic medication with the dosage 25 mcg frequency daily that is actually prescribed on September 2014. Similarly, levothyroxine was increased to 50 mcg daily. So now levothyroxine dosage is 50 mcg, done on Feb 2015, right? And similarly, chest pain is a symptom, and chest is a system organ site, right? It's basically an organ, and chest pain itself is a symptom, right? Palpitations again is a symptom, and you see an error here. All of us know ED means emergency department, right? But here ED is being detected as an address. That's not my address. I don't want it to be my address, right? It actually is the hospital visit. So this is an error if you see here, right? I wanted to point out that also. And GERD is the diagnosis, correct? So once we have trained such models, I didn't go into those details, but you can do such things. And now you can do, okay, looks like the patient has been varying his levothyroxine and his TSH has been varying. And you can build intelligent layers on the top of it, right? Similarly, if you see more examples, same case, muscle weakness. So here it's actually interesting. See, denies symptoms of proximal muscle weakness. So identifying that this is a no, that's important. That's very important, right? So this is where we say it's a symptom that has been negative, right? Again, 50 mcg, the date, more examples here. So once you have done that, okay, I just wanted to show what the intermediate result will look like. Now, once we have done that, what we can actually build is super cool, right? All of us know prior to consultation, typically nurses actually take vitals of the patients. But now we can enable these nurses to actually take very deep clinical history, the kind of history you learn in your founding or your actual MBBS training, right? Kind of taking very thorough history. Typically, nurses in India or in US are not trained to do that, but equipped with our Arintra software, they can actually do it today. So let's say the patient came with chest pain. nurses can now ask them, how long has your chest pain been going for? See the patient response 5 days. And then we can generate the next question based on the response. How often do you get your chest pain? Comes and goes. How would you describe your chest pain, tightness in chest? So it's going in a different direction now, right? It's not, and now we can identify if it's really a gastric problem, or is it a cardio problem, or is it a pulmonary problem, right? We can actually identify that and keep going in that direction of the line of history taking, right? And during consultation, all these patient prior records, basically we can actually process all this data and present it as an interactive timeline, the kind of timeline I showed to you earlier. And also the data that the nurses captured here actually can be seen by the doctor as a thorough history. And this is something that actually we have deployed in India. We were working with a lot of PharmD students in the past, more than 50 to 60 PharmD students. And we have a team of medical professionals, like including PharmDs, basically who developed such algorithms and also developed, we're using this clinically with real doctors, learning from them. And we were. It was a great learning experience for us and for them as well, right? So they were able to take such thorough history and actually present it to the doctor, right? And all this actually saves more than 30% of the doctor's time, because now they have the initial history has already been taken, so doctors can directly dive into the deeper parts of the history, things that otherwise in the lack of time they could have missed, right? And this is where Arintra has been deployed very successfully. And this is the other part where if what happens to the past data. So this one we talked about is actually capturing new data of the patient. But what about the past data? So you can take all this past data and actually present it as a timeline to the doctors for their quick understanding of who my patient is. And how does the whole history taking work? Patient comes with chest pain. We ask, does your chest pain radiate anywhere? Patient says radiates to left arm. We internally update our provisional diagnosis. We are like the way a doctor updates a provisional diagnosis in his mind when he's taking the history. We update the provisional diagnosis and then we generate the next question. What kind of chest pain do you feel in your chest? Tightness. Based on this, we update the history in provisional diagnosis again, and then generate the next question. So this process goes on and on till the time we have a very thorough clinical history, and that is presented to the doctor pre-populated in their hospital software or on a printed report or on their WhatsApp. Doesn't matter, right? For us, we have been very, very fortunate to work with very good doctors, and India is a country of extremely good doctors, and this is something we have learned. Dr. Raj Kiran, who is a leading rheumatologist in Hyderabad, we work with them along with one of our family colleagues. So his experience has been excellent. It saves him time. Most importantly, patient satisfaction went up. And what we also learned was the bonding between the patients and the families, or the patients and the doctors, all of them went up because patients were a lot more satisfied. There was someone to hear them out very, very thoroughly, right? And it gives Arintra, when deployed, it gave a new dimension of capturing patient details, and their experience has been excellent. Saves 1/3 of my time. This is a neurologist in Hosur. Time saving. It saves patient is satisfied and reduces the overwhelming OPD crowd, right? And if we have time, we can do some demos as well. But what we have really, really learned in this is AI has great potential. It can solve a lot of things in healthcare, actually help build very good assisting systems for the healthcare workforce. But it's very important to understand is it's not a plug and play solution. It's not a solution where you just come, hey, let's apply this. No, it doesn't work that way. We as engineers have to really develop good solutions for that specific problem, and only then we can make it work for that specific. This is the current state. It will evolve with time, but today we really have to develop solutions for that specific problem. And there is a significant amount of engineering effort, and data really, really matters, the quantity and the quality of the data. So thank you, and I can take questions, and if there is none, we can do the demo as well. Hello.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your presentation, and it was very knowledgeable and very interesting, especially for the pharmacy students, sir. Actually, there were some queries from the participants, like what are the courses necessary for pharmacy graduates to choose this field as a profession? Because we are more focusing onto the pharmacy profession. Is there any course, bridge course, so that after finishing their pharmacy course, they can enter into this field?
So yeah, there is not a specific course, but there are very good online resources. I end up recommending the course by Professor Andrew Ng at Stanford, but that's a little bit more engineering heavy course. Actually, I was talking to one of the neurologists also. He also asked me the same question, and I recommended him that course also. It's a Stanford machine learning course by Professor Andrew Ng, but a little bit engineering heavy. But I think the main idea is this is a very hands-on thing. You really have to try out a lot of things, and only then you will be able to learn it. The basics are okay, but it's really about trying your hands with, like, coding. And thing is, in the past decade, again, things have become very democratized. Anyone and everyone can actually use it. Earlier, when I was doing my PhD, it seemed like only people who have gone through a very rigorous PhD training could actually train such models, but now each and every one of us can do it. And that's what has opened up this floodgate, where lots and lots of applications are being built by professionals in different domains. So effectively, I would say there are lots of places, lots of good courses, and Doing's course stands out the most, I think. And it's just about trying out a lot of building small applications. Can I do drug discovery? Can I see if this drug and this drug interact through a machine learning model? Just building very small things and then building on the top of it is what will get you there.
Sir, there is one more query from a student, sir, named Vasuki. She is doing PharmD 5th year, and her doubt is treatment rules differs from one patient condition to the other condition, and how to believe machine learning accuracy in this aspect.
Right. So this is a fundamental question. The entire engineering faces this question, and this is the most legitimate question also. And the onus is really on the engineers to prove it. Right? Doctors should not trust us just because we say it's good. Right? So the way we do this is in 2 or 3 steps. We basically internally validate each and everything that we do, and then the second thing is we start showing it to the doctors on demand. Right? Basically, if they ask, we show, and we also show on some of the cases where let's say they would have like already predicted, and then we will show our, and slowly they will be able to build confidence on it, right? And this can be done through offline cases, the cases that have already been recorded, or could be done with real patients also. And over time, they develop confidence. But the most important thing we do is we mark out that, I'll talk about diagnosis, not the treatment plan, but we mark out that, let's say we are predicting this patient will develop lung cancer, then we will also justify why we are predicting it. We will say, seems like the patient has been having a severe cough for the past few years, does not have history of TB, blah, blah, blah. This is why we think, and lives in such and such area, carcinogenic areas. This is why we think he can develop lung cancer. So justifying our predictions, justifying anything that the machine says is what really helps doctors start trusting a system. But it is a very important question, and a question that all of us have to really answer. And this is per application, and maybe even per user, which in this case could be the doctor.
Sir, actually, in continuation to this query only, I have one small doubt, sir. Is it like as you mentioned, clinical decision support? Do we have a set of pre-decided symptoms and then we categorize the patients based on the symptoms? Why? Because means generally in different health conditions, we will have overlapping of the symptoms. So how will you differentiate?
Yeah, so basically we really have to like train systems on millions of such cases to, and that's where it gets hard, right? We don't have access to such data, right? So how do you do that? But the idea is to develop it on millions of such cases, let's say, and there you will see lots and lots of variations, right? You will see, let's say, 1 lakh patients who had multiple comorbidities, right? And then multiple existing conditions, but we still should be able to predict it, right? So the idea is having lots and lots of basically like bigger data sets on which you really train this, and the machine, and this is what the machines have got good at. Now it's about identifying huge, like bigger data sets, and then the machines will be able to figure it out, right? So for instance, like I can give a self-driving car example again. Like if there is a pedestrian with, let's say, a dog or a bicycle, we should be able to detect that there is a pedestrian and a cycle, although they are looking as like one entity. But by seeing lots of such examples, machines kind of get to learn that. And this can be extrapolated to healthcare, but getting access to that data becomes hard.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your very valuable information. And I hope all the pharmacy professionals got a vast knowledge about the artificial intelligence and their applications in actually the drug discovery and how we can use it in clinical aspects. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, and my email ID is, I'll just say Nitish@healthcloud.ai. If anyone has question, this is my email ID, Nitish@healthcloud.ai.com. Maybe Dr. Bhavishri can circulate that. If anyone has a question, they can email me also.
Yes, sir. Definitely. Thank you, sir.
So thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting me. But I really wanted to emphasize on one thing, that everything that we build here is actually to assist the healthcare workforce. I've repeated this 3 times, but I would like to repeat it 4th time as well, because this is where a lot of fear is being created, and that's not something I'm a fan of. So just wanted to emphasize on that. And it's a very exciting field to get into, and the right time to get into also. And just build it, and it's also a lot of fun. Cool. So that's where I'll stop. So thanks a lot for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move on to the next session of the day. The next session, I would like to introduce the speaker for the next session, Mr. Kannan. Mr. Kannan is a software professional with more than 20 years of industry experience in global projects. He has experience in all phases of software development lifecycle. He is experienced in ETL, reporting, data quality, distributed systems using Hadoop and Spark, business intelligence, data analytics, and machine learning. He has worked in banking, healthcare, pharmacovigilance, and telecommunication domains. He was a senior lecturer in private engineering colleges for more than 7 years. He has been mentoring students, faculty, and IT companies in various software technologies for more than 10 years. We welcome you, sir. The last session for the series of webinars is the artificial intelligence in pharmacovigilance, and the speaker is Mr. N. Kannan. He is the solution architect, RAK Analytics Solutions Private Limited, Bangalore.
Good morning, sir. We are on air. Sir, we are on air. We can go ahead with the presentation. Yeah, go on, sir, once.
Can I continue? I will share my.
Yeah. Can we go with the first slide, sir?
Yes, please. Start. Start.
1 second, sir. Yeah, 1 minute. Yes, sir. Let's go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I think we have almost reached the afternoon. Sorry for the delay. Okay, so actually, I think in the last few days you have been going through a lot of sessions which were very useful. You had gone through drug design and use of artificial intelligence in healthcare, therapeutics, and a lot of other sessions were there. As a continuation of that, we will look at pharmacovigilance and how AI can be leveraged in pharmacovigilance. So I know most of you would have gone through pharmacovigilance as a part of the curriculum and all those things. So what I will do is, I will keep the introduction to pharmacovigilance very, very brief or to minimal level. And let us focus mainly on the artificial intelligence role there. Okay. So this is the brief agenda. We will just have some touch points about pharmacovigilance, and we will talk about some of the challenges that the companies face when they create new drugs or vaccines, and how AI can help in automating this process or reducing the time to release to the market. And also I will call out some of the important areas where you could find some niche skills that you can develop for the job in case you are looking for a job as well. Okay. With that said, let me move on to the few important terms in co-vigilance, pharmacovigilance. Okay. So most of these are arranged in a mixed order. So these are the terms that I will be going through some frequently. I will be mentioning these terms. So we need to understand one important thing. Pharmacovigilance is primarily aimed at drug safety. Okay. So who are the players who will be involved in ensuring drug safety? Okay. So even though the manufacturers of the drugs are looking at profit as the main thing, they also have a role in making sure that the drugs are very safe. That is why the term co is added. Co is added to make sure that they also have a responsibility in making sure everything is happening. So adverse event, serious adverse event, all those things we'll be seeing. So in a nutshell, I'll tell you how a company that operates a product in healthcare or pharma. Okay. So one of the challenges that we face, let me go over some of the slides and then we'll go to the pharmacovigilance term. Okay. So one of the challenges that we face is most of the data that we deal with are not unique. Okay, if we create a data model. So let me go to a simple example so that you can relate to it. Suppose I'm creating a data collection or data repository of retail industry or banking industry. So in the retail or banking, I have specific structured data. For example, I have customer. A customer can be uniquely identified by a customer ID or customer first name and last name. Same way, product can have a product ID, account can have an account ID. But unfortunately, most of the terms that we deal with in the pharma industry or the healthcare industry are not having unique terms. For example, I take disease, or somebody goes to the doctor and tells what is wrong with him. He will say, sir, I have a little pain in the head and also I have some issues when I try to walk. Okay. Or he says I have fever and nausea and headache. So most of the terms are interrelated with each other. So when you talk about a doctor's visit, you may say these are the complications, but you cannot have a unique term. Same is the case with a drug. So sometimes when you are prescribed a drug or prescribed some cure, you may be given multiple drugs. So sometimes they may give you paracetamol, but it can be Dolo 650 or Crocin or whatever it is. So there is no way of uniquely identifying these drugs or the records. Another example is even the side effects. The side effects can be light drowsiness combined with headache and body pain. So you can try to mix and match multiple terms, but then it will become a complex record. Even the pain, they can be of different types. Pain, they'll say my head hurts, I have a severe pain, I have severe headache. So like that, there are multiple terminologies that combine, and it makes the data model difficult. So as a consequence of this, the different tables that we have, they have many relationship. Whereas if you look at a retail industry or a banking industry, suppose I buy a product, I go to Big Bazaar and buy 2 umbrellas, they have the SKU code, and the price is 800 rupees per umbrella. Customer name is clear, product is clear, the store location is clear, everything is uniquely identified. So the data model is very easy. Whereas here, it is very difficult. So this is one complexity that we have, because we are dealing with side effects, we are dealing with the drugs, we are dealing with providers, we are dealing with the disease and the parts of the diseases. Okay. Same way, if you look at the time domain, to manufacture one drug or vaccine, sometimes it takes 12 years. It has to go through animal trials, it has to go through human trials phase 1, human trial phase 2, human trial phase 3, then it has to be approved, then it has to be manufactured and marketed. So from the time it is conceived to the time it hits the market and ends in your patient's arms, it is going to be many years. Okay, so how do we reduce this time? How we can leverage AI to leverage or shorten this time? Okay, so that is what we are trying to understand. So right now we are having a very classic example. We are trying to come up with around 150 providers are trying to come up with a good vaccine for COVID-19, and around 26 products are having a rosy picture now. And at least the Oxford, which is tying up with the different providers or drug manufacturers, is having entered the third phase of the human trials. Okay, so a lot of, even the Bharat Biotech is coming up to the market, some vaccine that is viable. So we have to wait and see. So now what we have done is, we have shrunk the time frame from 4 years, which is minimum normally, to almost like 8 months. Okay, January 30th is when we had some official declaration of COVID virus. Now we are in August, and maybe in early 2021, we may have this drug in the shops or for ready to consume. Okay. So a lot of agencies have come together. We have cut down the time for approval and other things, and we are all working together as a global team to reduce this time. Artificial intelligence also has played a major part. Okay. So I'm going to slightly show a few slides which make some context that we will add to the pharmacovigilance. Okay. So again, to reiterate, pharmacovigilance is a list of things that we do, activities to detect, assess, and understand the impacts and how we can prevent side effects or adverse events when we take drugs. The drugs can be actual drugs or vaccines or even additional things that are related to the pharma industry. Okay. So software companies play a major role, and software companies work with the providers, work with the CROs, work with the government agencies, the regulatory bodies, and they try to make sure that the safety is given higher precedence or higher weightage, and also we do the due diligence, we do the best practices to make sure there are no corruption or there are no cutting the corners to achieve the product that we want to market. Okay. So there are two phases of it. Okay, so whenever we take the safety information, we take from two sources or two timelines. One is pre-marketing phase, which we talked about, the pre-clinical and clinical trial studies, and then post-marketing. Okay. So post-marketing, we have what is called as spontaneous reporting, regulatory authorities, and all the partners who are involved, they also have the obligation to report certain adverse events. And also we'll go through all the old reports or old history along with published materials, the medical literature, which are of different types. Okay. And also data collected by different parties that are involved. Maybe there's a EDC of the electronic data capture phase, which collects the CRF, and we have the providers or some random health worker comes across this particular thing, and even though a lot of other people fail to report, she says, okay, it is my duty to report, and she reports to the authorities. Okay, so that is the way we actually collect this data. Okay. So why pharmacovigilance is very important? There are many points. One of the point is that we want to reduce the death or serious adverse reactions, which are actually as a result of lot of products, lot of drugs. Okay, so sometimes the death due to negligence or death due to improper manufacturing process or death due to this lack of vigilance can be sometimes top the rankings into 4th, 5th, or 6th, or even 7th rank. Okay, so when we are having a possibility to curtail this, or when you're having a possibility to stop this, we should stop it. Somebody dies with an accident, which sometimes becomes we are helpless. We cannot avoid it. But things which is in our hands, we should definitely do it. Okay, so preventable deaths has to be stopped. Okay, and also the cost factor and lawsuits that are as a result of this negligence or preventable deaths can be avoided. Okay, so even disability or long-term impacts, these are all some of the concerns that we have. Okay. So these, in a nutshell, are the aims of pharmacovigilance. Okay, early detections of safety issues and detection in frequency of the side effects or adverse events, despite warnings from a lot of agencies. Okay, management. Okay, and also quantifying risk. Sometimes you have some peripheral numbers or peripheral ideas about how much is the thing, but we may not have foolproof risk factors or risk numbers identified. So that also has to be improved. Okay. Okay. So these are some of the ways in which we can assess the adverse reactions. Okay. So we have the MEDRA and the hierarchy of MEDRA, organ classes and different high-level terms and low-level terms, and categorizing it to serious or not serious. And sometimes we have the causal effect, whether this drug caused the effect. Okay, so how confident in matching this cause and effect relationship between the drug and the side effects. Okay, sometimes it is very difficult to prove. Sometimes the organizations that are manufacturing the drugs, they take the benefit of doubt clause. Okay, so it may be or may not be like that. Okay. And also a lot of drugs, we have to look for some expected side effects. Okay, so for example, a drug category or a vaccine category which is related to respiratory disease have been always reporting some rashes on the skin or vomiting. So you have to look for those things. You have to probe whether did you feel nauseating effect? Did you have any problem in swallowing food? Like that, you have to explore. So we want to watch for expected side effects. All right. So these are certain things that we normally always look into. who reports, why we report, and when to report. So these are the things that you would have already come across. Okay. So this is what to report and what are the bodies that are watching these regulatory things. I'll skip this. Let us go to artificial intelligence part. Okay. So these are certain areas where AI can help. Okay. So number one area where artificial intelligence can help is in reducing the time taken by automating some of the activities. Okay. So automation can be involved or can be leveraged in collecting the CRFs. Okay. So when we have the case report forms, a lot of times there are some unwanted delays. Identifying the timeline for each of the stages of the forms and each of the phases of different trials and all those things, we can actually automate this and see where is the bottleneck, where actually is the maximum delay that is available and how we can reduce it. Okay. So this is to do with the workflow and how we can shorten the workflow. So in this aspect, we have optical character recognition, OCR, which is able to read the forms. We also have the NLP, the natural language processing. So what we have is we have prescriptions, we have a lot of text data that is available. And since the amount of data is large, it takes a lot of time for the involved providers to get this and identify it. Okay, so NLP can play a very, very important part in reducing this time. Okay, so natural language processing is now more accurate. We have tools like Open NLP, NLTK, Watson, IBM Watson. Like that, there are many tools, and bulk of these tools are open source tools, and we can leverage these tools for shortening the time for this entire workflow. Okay, so not only in drug trials and other places, in identifying the regulation violence or the complaints violation, and in the process of so when we talk about so I worked in two companies. One is RS Global, that is very much knee deep into pharmacovigilance, and I also worked on a company called Jade Global. I'm not sure if that company is still there. It was in Delhi. They were into CTMS, which is Clinical Trial Management System, ETC, and we had worked with CDISC, Medra, and UTD and all those things. So here, our primary sub-projects were in registry. Registry means registering the different terms, and compliance and regulation, and extraction or the EDC, extraction of electronic data capture, electronic medical records, electronic health records, and also complying with the different standards. Okay. And of course, we also want to report the different things using the drugs, disease, providers. So we want to have also analytical reports. So I worked on the analytical area. Okay. So there are always linking of these models. Okay. So two important areas we are trying to work with are the drug repository or the drug registry, and also identifying the side effects or the adverse events and what are the different organs or different parts that are actually impacted. So those kind of studies we have been doing. Okay. So all of these involve a lot of text terms, text information, which are collected from a number of ways. Sometimes the doctor dictates, and this is converted into text by a person listens to that. That's called the transcripting. Now we have amazing voice recognition percentage. The accuracy of voice recognition is very, very high, and we can utilize this to shorten this time. So, for example, the doctor is saying, okay, this person has these symptoms, and probably this is the test that we have to do. And initially, let him start taking these drugs, and then once the reports come, let's see. Okay, so this can be converted very effortlessly using the NLP algorithms and speech recognition things, and you can get better turn in times compared to what we are currently doing. Okay. So another area is the data enrichment. Okay. So all of these work together. NLP is the primary part of the data enrichment also. So what it does is, so we have a continuous update of these terms. Okay, so we have the data dictionary from World Health Organization, and we have the MITRA, which has a hierarchy of data. Okay, so the different terms, and also whatever terms that the physician or any other interest party provides. So these needs to be enriched. Okay, so this enrichment happens, even the mortality and the adverse reactions and some odd bizarre cases of side effect. For example, that could be even a death or permanent disability for a simple dose of a common medicine also, okay, or a liver problem. So you can also refer to old histories. Okay, so these histories are available in different organizations and different third parties. So you can take data from multiple sources and validate it and provide data enrichment, which can go to the doctors who are prescribing the drugs, the companies that are manufacturing, and even the insurance agents are also related to this, because sometimes if there is some, let's say there's a medical negligence or there are certain norms violated by the hospital, okay, so then the insurance may even be in a different way it is processed actually. Okay. So these are high level things that the artificial intelligence can help in reducing the time taken. So the main part where artificial intelligence can play a major role is in reducing the time to manufacture a drug and market it to the public consumption. Okay, so that is where we have a very big bottleneck. Okay, so we used to have something like minimum 4 years, maximum like sometimes even 12 to 15 years. So these can actually be very much reduced because the time is very large. Suppose let us say a drug manufacturer has taken 10 years to manufacture a drug and start reaping its benefit. Now obviously then he will put all the cost onto the drug. Actually the drug may be just 2 rupees, but since the cost involved in doing all these analysis and the time taken and all those things, the drug's price can go up. Okay, so this in turn affects the normal customer. The consumer is getting affected by this actually. Okay, so some of the things that you want to look at are the METRA hierarchy you want to look at. You can also go to C-DISC and look at C-dash, which is very, very important. That is one place where there's a lot of opening job scopes. And you can look at EDC and EMR and EHR, because currently healthcare industry is given a big focus in not because of COVID, but these 5 years, last 2 years and next 3 years, there are a lot of government policies that are helpful for electronic health records, electronic medical records, EDC and all those things. So if you are in this area, you can focus more and get a lot of jobs. And if you're trying to create some products, maybe applications, maybe computer products or software products, it's a very good time because you will get a lot of funding, you'll get a lot of support from a lot of other agencies as well. Okay, and also there is a big effort by the government to automate and digitize all the medical records, and everything will be available online. Okay, so of course there will be a confidential agreement and all. So suppose if the doctor wants to look at your records, he does not have to wait for the file. It's already, most of the data is being digitized now, and even in small hospitals, digital records are available. Okay, so there is a lot of government funding and grant that is available, and among all the other industries, healthcare industry is getting a lot of support from the government agencies. Okay, so these are common benefits. I think this is from the TCS website. Okay, so these are some of the benefits offered by artificial intelligence in PV or the pharmacovigilance. Okay, so mainly the reduced time frame that we are looking at for different processes, especially the drug manufacturing and clinical trials. Enrichment of data, which will lead to better quality control and better accuracy of the data. Okay, so when we say we are using NLP or we are trying to use OCR, we are not depending completely on OCR or NLP. Okay, so we are taking a major percentage of work off of the person who is actually manually doing. So the manual, mundane, laborious process is now automated. So that means they will find out the accuracy, and let's say 90% of the data is now converted automatically. Only the 10% has to be done manually. So now you got a 90% advantage already. So the remaining 10% you can rely on the manual work. Okay. So that is what is actually available. So we have what is called as a data governance and data stewardship, which is a way of looking at the converted data and finding out the accuracy. For example, I have a list of side effects that are coming from multiple hospitals for a particular drug. Okay, so you have automated it, but now I want to ask a clerical person or a data steward to look at multiple sources of the data and find out something like a final cut of the data. Okay, so he will look at, let's say there is a error in a particular term. A particular term is having an error. We are not able to see whether it is DEC or nasal EC. Okay, so some kind of EC is there, but N or D we do not know. Okay, we want to make it correct. So the person who is a data steward will have some medical knowledge. He or she is a subject matter expert, and he can corroborate or correlate with the actual disease or the patient history, and then they can do certain corrections in case it is required. Okay, so that is one of the places where AI can also be a major player. Okay, so many of the times, let us say I have a prescription or some kind of consulting that has to be done by an expert. Let us say a heart specialist. Okay, so this heart specialist, I don't know whether you know it or not. There are some doctors, even in front of the patient, if they are in doubt, they will have a referring material. They will refer to the dentist. Some people will want to hide that referral process. They may look into some Google or something and do it, or the online version of the same document, but it has to be done. Okay, so subject matter expertise itself is available as a artificial intelligence thing. So bulk of the data, so this is called curated data. You cannot just go and browse on the net. Suppose a particular system has to work as a SME, as an automated system. So you will have curated and verified material that is fed into this. So it can search rapidly and find out certain correlation, and it can do a continuous learning. The learning is continuous process in which it gains more knowledge. Okay, that is called as the artificial general intelligence, AGI. So you can use artificial intelligence even for providing subject matter expertise in a very elaborate level. Okay, so instead of having to have a subject matter expert, some of the workload can be offloaded to the AI part. Okay, so that can also be a very important use of the AI. Okay, and artificial intelligence is also scalable in the sense that you can have distributed system. Instead of having a single server, you can have a distributed system. So its speed is extremely high. So just to give you an example, the previous speaker was talking about the artificial intelligence in healthcare. So when we used to do the understanding of scanned images. Okay, let us say we have taken a CT scan and you want to understand if the particular tumor in question is benign or malignant. Okay, so this is done nowadays by machine learning or the deep learning. Okay, so this deep learning uses complex algorithms and complex neural networks. So if I do it on my server, it is going to take 3 days. It may take 3 days or 4 days to complete this multiple epochs or multiple iterations. Whereas if I have a distributed system like a Google Cloud or AWS Cloud or a Hadoop system, then this can be drastically reduced to just 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Okay, so I don't want to go into the artificial intelligence role in image analysis and all those things, but that is a huge area where we have benefits that will reach the healthcare industry, also the pharmacovigilance. So your distributed systems can be a very, very scalable system that will reduce the time taken to process the thing. Especially you want to analyze images or analyze, I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, so we have been doing research with one of the spinal cord hospitals. So what this does is, okay, so we have some spinal cord related disease. So we want to predict this disease well ahead of time. Okay, so when the spinal cord discs they get compressed, the disease will tell itself by means of some biomarkers that will start being present in the spinal cord fluid. So these biomarkers, they will start slowly and they will reach a perceivable level. You can perceive it by some test. So these biomarkers are identified, then you can easily predict the disease upfront. Even 3 years before the onset of disease, you can predict. So now, this involves multiple things. It is not easy. It is not just like you go to a lab and get it. So first of all, this requires biomedical machines, okay, which are very, very costly, and only few of the machines are available. Secondly, it involves, because it is involving the gene sequencing. Okay, it involves the gene sequencing. So gene sequencing data processing is a big data product. Okay, it's a big data analytics system. So you are trying to combine multiple things: gene sequence, the machine that is required to, what is that liquid you have to analyze. Okay, the analysis of that liquid and disintegrating the liquid into components is very, very complex. So, and also you have the software programming using big data. Okay, so because of all these things, only some 4 or 5 agencies are doing in India. Okay, so that is just an example. So if any drug or any outcome that is going to be having an effect that is similar to this, identification of the side effect also is going to be so complex. Okay, or if a particular drug created a particular change into some genetic code or genetic sequence. Okay, so that also is something that AI can play a very important role. Okay. So above all this point, better compliance is a very, very important point. Better compliance is very important because compliance violation leads to sometimes even high penalties and even banning of the drug or something the company itself. So why some of the companies try to avoid the complaints? Because if it is known or if it is found that they are violating something, then they will stop the manufacturing of the drug, or sometimes they will ask them to do more due diligence work, which will further delay. And this, they are working in a very competitive environment. Okay, the drug industry is a very competitive industry, and that is why they try to cut corners. So AI can reveal a lot of patterns. Okay, the trends and patterns of the drugs and the interaction and the disease that they are addressing. So all those things can be easily made available as a data insights, which the companies that are monitoring can use to identify, and then you can have better compliance and better regulatory standards as well. Okay. All right, so these are the high level, some of the important applications of artificial intelligence. I have not touched the role of artificial intelligence in hospitals or diagnosis and all this. I've just talked about some of the important roles that can be played. So now I want to talk about some of the areas where you can focus as a job opportunity. Okay, so few of the areas are very, very niche for you because a software engineer cannot come and do it because you need the knowledge of pharma industry. Okay, so apart from your conventional job roles that you already know, okay, so for example, you can go to the drug industry and get a job as a microbiologist or pharma expert and all those things. So, apart from those things, you can look at the complaints, the data complaints or the reactions complaints, and some of the other things could be the understanding of MEDRA, understanding of World Health Organization data dictionary. So these themselves, there are a lot of consulting requirements that are available, and also a lot of jobs that are available for this. And another huge area is the EDC, electronic data capture, and how these case report forms are being submitted, and sometimes a lot of best practices need to be followed there. So there can be a major player that can come and pitch in. Okay. So as part of the EDC, we have the electronic medical records, electronic health records. So that is part of the automation process that's going on in all the health industries and all the major hospital chains. Okay. So there we can actually contribute major things. And so those are the main areas where we can look at in the pharmacovigilance, and also being a person who follows the best practice. Okay, so you can be become an agency that these CROs or the drug manufacturing companies, they can come and ask your advice in doing that. Okay, so a lot of software products that you may know are from companies like Medidata. Then we have Oracle that is doing a big job, Accenture, Aris Global, and a lot of other software companies have wings or the center of excellence for the healthcare products and pharmacovigilance. But as such, they may not have given products. For example, Oracle has the drug safety database called Argus, and Aris Global has Aris G. Like that, a lot of companies, they have their own products. Okay, these products make them the top 3 or top 5 players in the pharmacovigilance. So the way to enter this market as a software provider is to come up with the products. Okay, so when we say products, it doesn't work. It doesn't look like something in a box, but they are a combination of multiple data models, scripts that are created, and a simple front end that is used. Okay, so that is how actually these products are built. And as I told you, Oracle, Aris Global, and a lot of other companies are big players in these sectors. Okay. So I think that's pretty much what I have today. And if there are any questions, I can answer from a software and artificial intelligence perspective.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your informative session. Actually, the doubt is, sir, to what extent the regulatory authorities are in accordance with the data collected by using AI?
Okay, so AI is an enabler. Artificial intelligence is an enabler. So as I told you, AI doesn't work alone. Okay, so it is useful in reducing the time taken for laborious or mundane work. And also NLP, I told you NLP. So we are using NLP in a lot of ways, and if you look at the accuracy, it is very high. For example, we have been developing chatbots and NLP-based customer retention management systems. So where a lot of data, which is textual in nature, they come into the common repository called the corpus of data. So NLP has what is called as natural language understanding. Okay.
Yes.
And here in medical terminology or in the pharmacovigilance, we are looking at different terms that are related to either drugs or side effects or the symptoms like that. So these are more, the accuracy of these will be very high, because here we are not trying to parse different sentences, or we are not trying to be a automated engine that takes conversation from multiple people and convert it. Here we have very, very specific words and terminologies. So wherever there is a mismatch, or it could not be matched with a set symptoms in the record, maybe the Mitra dictionary, it can be done by the data governance team of the. So the accuracy is very high. If your question is how much of it is being used or how much of it is converted into AI, I think that percentage is very less. It may not be even 50%. But once it is implemented, the accuracy is very high.
Okay. Okay, sir. And one more thing is, most of the students will be having a doubt, sir. This is on behalf of all the students. Generally, they'll have a doubt that whether the pharmacy professionals, especially, whether the pharma degree is sufficient to join or to enter into pharmacovigilance, or do they need any bridge courses which will offer more knowledge about the softwares?
Okay, so there are no courses actually. The courses are not required. But identifying where there is a gap, and mastering that. Okay, mastering that is very important. So, for example, the data enrichment part I told you, even
Yes,
though
sir.
that looks very easy, companies are struggling with matching these terms. Okay, so for example, I'll give you a collection of all the symptoms that came in a particular hospital, or all the side effects that have been reported. So to collect this and put in a proper dictionary or proper thing, that itself we do with people. Whatever we are trying to do, we are paying a lot of money for third-party agencies to do this. Okay, so these are some. So it is a matter of interest. There are some courses that are available, but I'm not very sure if that will help, and that is not something like a branded course. But it is the interest that we have to take. You have to take interest, and compliance and regulation and all. There is a lot of scope, and it is. I think it is having a very high salary also. The salary package that people are having is very high. So what I would advise is, you can learn certain software that are not necessarily pharmacovigilance related, but a generic software like open source software like Python or something like that. And that will augment your learning process, and it will speed up your learning, and it will land you in the right area of your expertise.
Sir, there is one more query, sir, from Dr. Suresh Jain. He's asking about, can you kindly advise the free versions of softwares available for pharmacy graduates?
Can you say it again, madam?
Free software versions available for pharmacy graduates.
Free softwares available, huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can I check and let you know?
Sure, sir.
Check and let you know. I will try to categorize them, and I will let you know.
And sir, one more thing is, for pharmacovigilance, is it like the PharmD is more preferable or BPharmacy, sir?
You are talking about the degree.
Yes, sir, the degree. PharmD or BPharm, which is more preferable in the field of pharmacovigilance?
You are saying BPharm or something like that, you're saying?
Yes, sir. BPharmacy or PharmD?
I do not know, madam, exactly. I think I will have to get back to you on that. I will just check with my seniors and let you know.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us and sharing your knowledge. And we are very grateful for having you in the show. Thank you, sir.
Thank you everyone for your valuable time and participation. I appreciate that. Thank you.
There was a time gap or a delay in between the two sessions because of the technical difficulties. We are very sorry on that part, but anyways, as promised, we have completed all the sessions. Now we are moving on to the formal vote of thanks. Now I request my colleague and friend, Dr. Shruti Khanna, to be on the show for posing the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Let us now start the Valedictory program for the webinar sessions on Artificial Intelligence in Drug Discovery and Healthcare System, organized by RBVRR Women's College of Pharmacy. Now I invite our principal, ma'am, to add concluding remarks for the event. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shruti.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, it's my privilege to address the gathering on the occasion of this valedictory function. Respected Secretary Professor K. Muchim Reddy garu and all the speakers of this webinar and colleague participants and all the student participants, my colleagues, a warm welcome for this valedictory function. We have completed all the sessions successfully on time without any interruption except this last session. Sorry for the inconvenience for all the participants. I hope we gained a lot what we expected before starting this webinar. So this webinar, given the information, I think more than our expectation. To gain this type of knowledge, we have to spend more time. But with less time, we got all this information through all these eminent speakers. By spending maybe 1.5 hours, we come to know that wide applications of artificial intelligence in both drug discovery as well as this healthcare system. Now, I have attended all the sessions, all the speakers. From my point of view, I can say that machine learning is a more accurate method to develop this pharmacophore development. Why I am telling this? In analog-based drug design, which is nothing but QSR studies, we have to develop the pharmacophore model to extract the molecules, new molecules. But here, what is happened in this machine learning? So whatever the data we are getting, the data is from the human beings. So that helps a lot to develop a pharmacophore model instead of experimental data from the animals. So based on this information, I can say that this machine learning model is more accurate and more appropriate and easy to handle also to extract the new molecules. This I can say that in drug discovery, machine learning plays a vital role. And next, coming to this artificial intelligence in healthcare system, other modules, other subsets like this molecular, this machine learning, so they are helping a lot. So what are the different aspects? We can say that. So with this, we can say we can delay to visit the doctor. Why? Because many apps or many softwares are there to say that because of these symptoms, maybe this is the thing we have. So no need of visit the doctor. So that also helping to reduce the number of visits to the doctor. And one more thing is because of the data sets which are available and because of the apps, the doctor come to know that what exactly the patient, what are the symptoms and signs before we enter to the doctor, before we see the doctor came to know that the patient, what is the condition of the patient. So with this, what is happening? So it can save the time for the doctor. So nowadays, anyhow, doctors are not finding the time to counsel the patient. So this helps a lot. So without having the direct contact with the patient, the doctor came to know that the condition of the patient, so that I can say that. So without spending much time also, we can get the effective medication from the doctor. One more thing, so it generates a lot of data sets. Huge data sets are available from this clinical side. So these data sets are helping not only to diagnose a disease, not only to reduce the time for prescription of the medication, and it also helps a lot in drug discovery part. So we need not to get the experimental data on animals. Now we are getting the experimental data directly from the human beings. So it helps a lot for the accuracy of the drug discovery. So these are the things what I observed from all the talks. I just summarized these things. And one more thing is, now we come to know that there is the scope for the pharmacy profession to enter into this field also. So we have many diversifications of jobs. So apart from those jobs, now you can also look into this field, that is artificial intelligence. So with this, I would like to conclude my address on this occasion and over to Shruti. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Proceed with vote of thanks. On behalf of RBVRR Women's College of Pharmacy, myself, Dr. Shruti, Associate Professor, Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry, would like to take the privilege of proposing vote of thanks on this occasion. On the first note, I express my humble thanks to our Honorable Secretary, Professor K. Mucham Reddy, sir, for his valuable support in enriching this program. Thank you, sir. I extend my profound gratitude to our respected Principal Ma'am, Professor M. Sumakant, for her support and guidance in organizing this webinar. Ma'am, your foresight in opting this topic for the webinar is highly commendable, which definitely paved all the participants to understand the newer dimensions of artificial intelligence in healthcare system. Thank you, ma'am. I take this opportunity to express my heartfelt thanks to all the eminent speakers for providing us latest insights and knowledge on artificial intelligence and machine learning concepts. Let us look into this one by one. On the day one, that is on 4th August, we had a scientific session on the topic Machine Learning in Drug Design by Dr. Devapriya Kumar, Associate Professor, International Institute of Information Technology, Hyderabad. Sir has explained about various automated approaches and various machine learning methods that have a great potential to make the drug discovery process more efficient. Thank you, sir. On 5th August, we had a scientific session on the topic Role of Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare System by Dr. Sudeep Bhattacharya, Assistant Professor, Department of Community Medicine, Himalayan Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi. Sir has outlined that the purpose of artificial intelligence is to make the computers more useful in solving problematic healthcare challenges and how by using computers we can interpret data which can be applied for the diagnosis of various chronic diseases. Thank you, sir. 6th August, we had a scientific session on the topic New Paradigms in Drug Discovery and Development, Applying Artificial Intelligence to Bioprinting and System Therapeutics by Dr. Pallab Datta, DST Inspire Faculty, Center for Healthcare Science and Technology, Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology, Shibpur. Sir discussed about the prerequisites for the artificial intelligence and about various types of machine learning and the role of 3D bioprinting in drug discovery. Thank you, sir. On 7th August, we had a scientific session on machine learning importance in medical domain by Dr. M. Srinivas, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Warangal. Sir has explained how machine learning in healthcare has its ability to process huge data sets beyond the scope of human capability, and then how it could be reliably analyzed for clinical insights that could aid physicians in planning, providing care, and ultimately leading to better patient outcomes. Thank you, sir. On 8th August, we had the first scientific session. That is, today we had the first scientific session on the topic role of artificial intelligence in healthcare system by Dr. Nitish, CEO, co-founder of Health Cloud AI Bangalore. Sir had discussed about the potential of machine learning within the medical industry through his in-depth examples of how the technology can be applied to provide medical diagnosis and treatment of various diseases. Thank you, sir. And the same day, we had one more scientific session on the topic Artificial Intelligence in Pharmacovigilance by Mr. N. Kannan, Solution Architect, RAC Analytics Solutions Private Limited, Bangalore. Sir has explained how artificial intelligence can assist in both routine and advanced analytical tasks involved in conducting pharmacovigilance, and also he explained about various career opportunities related to the field. Thank you, sir. Thank you one and all. I express special gratitude to the program coordinators Dr. A. Krishna Shailaja, HOD Department of Pharmaceutics, and Dr. K. Bhavyashri, HOD Department of Pharmaceutical Analysis, for arranging this live knowledge sharing sessions from various industrial and academia experts in the field of artificial intelligence. Thank you, ma'ams. I would also like to thank the chairpersons of the webinar sessions, Dr. Sudha Parimala, HOD Department of Pharmacognosy, Dr. A. Krishna Shailaja, HOD Department of Pharmaceutics, Dr. J. Archana, HOD Department of Pharmacology, Dr. P. Triprasundari, HOD Department of Pharmaceutics, Dr. M. Vijay Bhargavi, HOD Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry, Dr. K. Bhavyashri, HOD Department of Pharmaceutical Analysis, for the lively interaction with the speakers during the webinar. Thank you, ma'ams. At this outset, our special thanks goes to the organizing committee members, Dr. M.P. Kusuma, Ms. Zeenat Banu, Mrs. Safura Aisha Muzib, Ms. Sayeda Shabana Sultana, Mrs. Hari Anushri, for their untiring efforts in organizing this seminar on a smoother note. I would also like to thank all our faculty members for their support in organizing this event. Last but not the least, I would like to appreciate and thank all the participants for your patience listening and zeal in attending these webinar sessions. And thank you for bearing with us for the technical issues arising during the session. And we also expect that these sessions have driven you to the world of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and also provoked you to discover their novel applications. Every ending brings a new beginning. On behalf of RBVRR Women's College of Pharmacy, we promise you that we keep coming with many such upcoming events that enhance our professional knowledge and skills in the field of pharmacy. Thank you one and all. Stay connected, stay safe, and keep learning. Over to you, Anushri.